you sure? Welcome to Psychic Holistic Spotlight of Rhode Island. I'm Kathy, your host for today, and we have also Bill Hannon co-hosting with me today. Today we actually have an old colleague of mine. We've known each other for quite some time, and her name is Tracy Malloy. She does a lot of energy medicine, some Akashic Records readings, a few different things, but that's the biggest stuff. So what is like the biggest thing that you do the most?
So what I practice most is energy healing. That incorporates a lot of things, shamanic work, helping people figure out their authentic self so they can live their life as happy and as joyful as they can. Mm-hmm. And one of the tools that I use to do that is going into their Akashic Records. Mm-hmm. Okay. Because we're all different. We all have unique things about us, and we all have our own agreements that we make for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. What do you see as the biggest thing though? Like, do people come with questions though when they get a reading from the Akashic Records?
I do recommend that people have a list of at least 6 questions. Sometimes we're only allowed about an hour in the records. So sometimes we only answer 2 questions. Okay. Generally recommend that the questions are things that are really pertinent in their life. A lot of people's questions are about their soul purpose, jobs, relationships with other people. And those can take a lot of time to answer. Okay. So, yeah. So
how long have you been able to read the Akashic Records?
I was certified by the Akashic Center of Studies from Linda Howe. She's in Chicago, and it's been about 4 years now.
Okay. Now, was that in person or was it virtual?
It was in person, actually. Linda Howe trains other people to train other people using her process.
Okay, so was it through Linda directly or was it one of her students?
It was one of her students, Patty Collinsworth, and she was a great teacher. Okay. One of the things about the Akashic Records, Linda Howe developed a special prayer to help everybody get into the records. Okay. Because it's all of our birthright to have access to our soul.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Huh. Yeah. So there's no intuition involved. People get a little discouraged when they sit with me because they try to test you. Like, well, can you tell me about this dream I had? And I'm like, well, explain the dream. Excuse me. It's not at all an intuitive process. We're not allowed to interpret anything. We're only allowed to give what that soul gives. Mm-hmm. So always ask people to be very descriptive. How is this going to make your life better? How is this going to help you sleep at night? So it's generally not a reading that a lot of people want, because a lot of people want you to use your intuition, and that's just not how...
Yeah, the future stuff, and that's a very different kind of reading.
Absolutely, because there are a million paths for the future, and it's just making a choice and making a decision.
Right. I remember one time I had a reading, and just to certify or anchor your assertion that it's not on tuition, the woman who was giving me the reading said that, the guy who's looking at my records is taking a long time because there's a lot of things for him to look through.
Yes.
And so the thing is that's exactly what you're saying. You're saying that, it's a direct link, like you plug in the phone line and you're getting that information. You're not picking up anything on intuition.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you bring up a really good point. A lot of people naturally are able to access the records because they have a guide for that. I don't have a guide for that, so I use a different process. And so I absolutely agree with you.
Now, how does that work though when you don't have a specific guide though for the Akashic Records?
So for me, I don't have a guide for that. Some people might have a specific guide. Like I have a colleague who has a specific guide, so she doesn't need to use this process to get into someone's records. She just has a direct link to it. I've never had that, but I wanted to be certified and take these classes for myself. And it's really helped myself. I can go into my own records, ask questions. It's very, very informative. And then I decided, I honestly didn't take the classes thinking I was going to use this process for anyone. But there are people that I do recommend it for.
Now, when Bill had his reading, it took the guy that was looking at his records a long time. Does that mean he's had many, many lives?
No. So when you form a question in the records, they may ask for more information.
Okay.
They may want to understand the reason for asking the question a little bit more. And so what that does is it dives you deeper into the record to get to your soul, the center of your soul, and kind of see really what the reason is behind what's happening.
That's part of the soul contract, though, right? When they look at the records, or is that different?
Yes, you have many, many soul contracts. Through my working in the records, I firmly believe that we all have unlimited lives, and we can connect to many different lives. And the way that I've felt it is every single person who asks a question, is this related to a past life? Yes, it is, because there's always something that you can pull from so that person doesn't feel alone. Like you're not the only person who's gone through this, does that specifically mean it was their personal past life? I don't know. But we're all connected,
Yeah.
So we're all connected to that. So
not necessarily the same thing, but yeah.
Yeah, so it may not necessarily be a past life. I mean, actual past lives for me feel very, very different than an example that the records might be giving me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it very could be this current life, though, but yet it can relate to other stuff as well, too.
Absolutely, because we're connected to all of consciousness. Yes.
So is it, I've also heard that Akashic records are being referred to as the Book of Life. Is that the same thing, or is that separate? Yeah.
No, it's pretty similar from my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So there's really no difference in that, though.
Not truly.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, it's just the people's perception of what they, grew up to believe, kind of thing, right?
Labels, beliefs, that all affects our records. One of the things that was important for me in the records is knowing that there are things that are going to reinforce my authentic self. And sometimes I come across things that, weaken that link to my authentic self. So what I generally do when I come across something like that weakens me, I will go into my records and I will ask questions and I will do research and kind of see what other information is out there. For the most part, people form their beliefs based on their upbringing and their experience.
Right.
So I always encourage somebody, if we come across something that weakens that link to their authentic self, to be open-minded and see what else might be out there.
Okay, that will help them along.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you get a lot of clients that struggle with finding out what their authentic self is or the purpose of being here?
I think we all struggle with that.
Okay.
Absolutely. For me, the biggest thing in exploring my own spirituality was that I always had this belief in God, right? Because that's how we're all brought up, my family wasn't big churchgoers, but Christmas, Easter, we might get dressed up and go to church.
Yeah.
But when I started doing this work, none of that sat right with me anymore. And so for me, that belief in God that somebody else was in control was limiting what I was being able to express.
Right.
So I had to let that go and learn that I don't need to have that belief in order to help other people who do.
Yeah.
Right, the hierarchy of the organized church versus the openness of a spiritual.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And I mean, I've certainly had Reiki clients where archangels have come in. And because I know that everybody what comes in and what's in everyone's astral field is related to their beliefs, I'm not put off by that. That's welcoming. That's their support. That's what they need. So it's been interesting.
Yeah. So on that point, though, in my experience with some stuff, 'cause I don't read the Akashic records. It's not what I do. And maybe though next year. I don't know. So in my experience, I've seen that people still have that religious belief, but yet still do a lot of this work. It's not as many as the follow away the religious upbringing. Have you seen that as well, though, too, when you give the readings and in your work?
The the religious upbringing for a lot of people can actually be very reinforcing because that's their sense of community. And so there are many people who the answers from the records are, you know, go back to church and reinforce that faith because they need that community support. I think a lot of people struggle when they do spiritual stuff if they have that belief. And I just tell them you shouldn't. You know, if that's what makes your relationship with yourself better, that's you.
Yeah.
So do you, you know?
Yeah, I like that though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some times the people forget that it's like you can combine it.
Yes.
You know, whatever suits you best.
Yes.
Sure. And,
Yeah.
and also, I mean, there are people that spiritually need a stronger foundation that can be reinforced by people, other people, and the community is helpful for them to build up to the point where they're able to reach out on an individual exploration.
Yes, agreed. Yep, absolutely. But I mean, I've worked with witches, pagans, Catholics, born again Christians. So for me, letting go of that belief really just kind of opens up who I was able to support.
Yeah, I just find it fascinating that, like, regardless of where we come from, we all have the same questions. We all wonder about the same thing. It's like, okay, what's next? Or what should I do? Though it's like, what's going on here? It's like, you know, sometimes you get at such a loss for things.
Yep.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just a matter of letting go what's limiting you. And in order to find out what's limiting you, you have to do some soul searching.
Yeah.
And that's scary for people because it's pretty much all on your own.
Well, with some guidance, but yes.
With some
Yeah,
guidance.
because we still have to do the work.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the thing, though.
Yeah. Yep.
So, the authentic self, though, I know a lot of people will struggle with that. How far off base have you seen some clients, though, with, really off base?
Yeah, you know, when you're dealing with the authentic self or you're dealing with spirituality, people don't like their shadow. That's why we repress it. That's normal human behavior, you know. We're gonna not like certain people because they're loud or because they're happy. And that's just a sign that, you know, your shadows, you're hiding your shadow.
Yeah, so that's something that we got to work on. For people that don't know what the shadow is, can you just explain that a little bit?
So the shadow self is essentially everything that we reject about ourselves. And to be honest, it really hurts us. You know, we're not all perfect. We all have bad qualities. We all wish we didn't say things a certain way or react a certain way. And so when you start to see these things that you do and just accept them, you tend to see them less.
Right,
So that's what's called incorporating.
I think the key word of what you just said right there is using the word react. You know, your initial response to something may alienate you to something or something that you don't care about another person because you don't resonate to their frequency. And you see that as a difference, and therefore, because it's different, you don't care for it.
Yep, and you tend to hold it against that person.
Exactly. Rather than stepping back as a third person and look at the dynamics between yourself and that person. And if you can do that, then you're able to.
Yeah, being able to step back and say, okay, why do I have such a problem with this?
And I tell you what,
Yeah.
it took me a long time to develop that. You know,
Yeah.
I've gone through several levels of business and business ownership and all these dynamics.
Yeah.
And the people you're working with and the people that you're the boss of and stuff like this, you know, stepping back and trying to ascertain what's really going on in the background really makes a big difference as to how fast you can move forward to resolving that situation.
Absolutely. And you know, there are still going to be situations, you know, that are going to bother you, but at least if you know why it bothers you, you know why you don't agree.
And that's why
You don't have as much conflict.
The
You just
records.
like, that's not for me.
the records are a great way to approach that, and somebody like you is a great tool to have to be able to do that, you know.
Yeah, it definitely will help. There's one tool that definitely helps. Okay, what's going on here and why?
The very same person that, you know, you're having an issue with, you may have a contract with that person to get in your face all the time or to slow things down. And the nice thing about it is by somebody coming to you and trying to understand that. I think it'd be great for them to convey the idea that this is something you have to work out. Don't rush to judgment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. And I part of my integration of shadow self was I can be so judgmental. I can, and I
Yes,
tell
right.
people all the time, like, yeah, I made a judgment.
Right.
You know, maybe I'm not going to make the same judgment next time, but I did.
Yeah.
And you know what? I can't change it. So
Yeah, it helps acknowledging it though, so you can
yes,
move
it
forward
does.
with it.
Yes, it does. And
Yeah.
now I find that I'm much less judgmental with people. You know,
Yeah,
Right.
because you're aware of it. Yeah.
because I'm aware of it.
Yeah.
Like, ooh, am I judging? Let me think about this for a second
Yeah.
before I start typing.
Right. Right.
Yeah, open your
Well,
mouth. If
Yeah.
it's in person,
Another
yeah.
another good example of that, how the judgment. I mean, one of the things that we're here for, a lot of us, is to help raise children. You know, and the thing is, because you're in a leadership role, it's so easy to judge somebody because of past things, and that may not be anything that they're coming from. You know, and so the thing is, because of past patterns, and you judge them on that
Yes.
rather than the progress they've made. You know, it's just a hard thing to do as a
Yes.
parent.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. I think in everything, asking questions is so important. You know, like I said, I'm a judgmental person, so I always feel like I'm being
I
judged.
think we all are.
You know.
to some level.
So something that's important for me is if somebody says something, I ask questions. Like, it sounds to me like you're saying this. Can you clarify that? Because to me, I'm hearing it as this. Can you clarify that? And then when you're comfortable enough to ask those questions, like you said, a lot of times what you're feeling from the person doesn't even exist. So yes, absolutely. So
Yeah.
asking questions is super important.
Yeah, so you can deal with the good, bad, and the ugly, right? Yeah. Yeah, it's just so, it's also too, going back to what you were saying though, too, though, like, you know, there's somebody from my past in this life, though, that we didn't get along, like, at all. But it was also in our contract, though, that we wouldn't get along in this life. And it took me a long time to accept that. Because I always thought, okay, what am I doing wrong, though, for this relationship to be clashing? But it's in the records, though, that way, that we weren't going to get along.
Yes.
So, and from what I remember, this was not the first life, though, with this person, though, either. So it's
Usually
like,
isn't.
yeah.
Yep.
Especially if you're the older soul, you're like 20 lives behind you, though, at least.
Right.
You know, so it's just like, that took me a long time to accept that, though. I'm like, okay, so once I resolved it, though, it's like, it wasn't so bad. You know, once I
Yes.
accepted it, though. So it's just like, there's some struggles, though. It's like, sometimes the dynamics isn't always okay. It's like, what's the ugly in me, though, that's having a problem with this person?
Yes.
Usually it is, but it isn't always the
It
case.
isn't always the
Yeah.
case, you're right. Sometimes it's just in your contract that you're going to be in a situation that I had a long-term friendship that had dissolved, and the friendship had kind of been on and off for a few years, but it got to the point where I couldn't be friends with this person. And I spent a lot of time in my records trying to figure this out, and in the records it was basically like, you're there only for a certain period of time, and then you got to step back and let them deal. And that was hard because I wasn't doing anything wrong. That was difficult.
Yeah, it's always, you know, the first thing that we come to is like, okay, what am I doing wrong here?
Yep.
You know, and it's hard not to think that as a human, though. It's like,
Yeah.
sometimes we forget we're still human. We still come from the human aspect.
Yes.
But we have to allow ourselves, though, to come from that aspect, though, too.
True, and also sometimes in the spiritual community, they're like, well, it's you. You're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
You know,
it isn't
and
always, but
people
yeah.
say that over and over to you, so that's what you believe.
Yeah.
Because it's not always that you've done anything wrong.
Yeah, it's, you know, sometimes things don't happen for a reason, like for a season, or sometimes it's a lifetime.
Yep.
So it just depends on the particular situation.
It does.
Yeah. You know, that's all set up already, though, too, though, in the records and stuff.
Now, I understand that you guys also have a relationship with Reiki. And so what's that entail? I mean, how many years have you been, Tracy?
So I was first Reiki attuned at the Soul Purpose with Jessica Kozak Shaw. I don't even know how I have no concept of time. But it was
You're not alone in that.
the Usui Reiki never really sat quite well with me. There was just something that was just wrong. And then Kathy was teaching Holy Fire Master Teacher class, and I took that class, and my Reiki sort of settled. So Holy Fire Reiki is, they call it a different, higher
Vibration,
refined
right.
vibration. And basically it's because you don't do anything. You know, we don't remove anything. You just kind of let the Reiki heal.
Right.
So.
I think that's been at least 4 years now, because that was before I got my office. Though, and
believe
it's been
so.
about 3.5 that I'm in my office.
Yeah, it's been a while.
So, yeah. Yeah. Well, I've known her from way before that, though, too, from when we were younger, though, too. It's like,
True.
oh, well, son, one day we saw each other at a fair. I'm like, hey, I think I know you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's funny how that works. I don't even teach Holy Fire Reiki anymore. You know, now I teach Isu and Karuna Reiki. And that's okay. You know, it's like, I like the Holy Fire Reiki. It just doesn't, it just wasn't meant for me the long term. And I find that interesting, though, because you needed someone to teach,
Yes.
to be taught, to teach
Yes.
you your Holy Fire. So I think that was my purpose in that.
Yeah, Holy Fire apparently, because I've taken a few of William Rand's follow-up classes,
Oh, yeah.
apparently Holy Fire doesn't work with every other type of Reiki. So for me, the Usui wasn't working for me, and I never wanted to do Karuna or any of the others, but the Holy Fire was,
Yeah, definitely.
that's what settled with
Yeah.
me. Yep.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's a good Reiki, though. Just
Yes.
yeah, it just wasn't for me long term.
Yep.
So I
And
just
And
needed
it's
to
everybody
do that all
also,
the time.
I mean, also sometimes the person you're working with
Yes.
It
is
was-
more receptive to a different vibration. You know?
Yes.
So I
Yep.
mean, if you just open yourself up to spirit and say, hey, it's in your hand now. You know, it's
Yep.
let them.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those. Definitely just needed to do that for a season, for sure. For
Yeah.
that
Because
one,
you had to teach me.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think there was like 3 other students in that class, though, too. If I
There
remember
was,
correctly.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's just interesting how things like that, though, kind of fall into place. So when it needs to be.
Yep.
Yeah, it really needs to be. Now, do you do anything else other than the Reiki, though? Or the,
So I do full spectrum healing.
Okay.
I'll do some tarot cards.
what's the full spectrum healing?
Full spectrum healing is you're basically using healing, but you're going through the different layers of the aura, lifting different things out of the aura and the different levels of the aura.
Okay.
So I learned that, I just finished that in December.
Okay.
So that was definitely a little bit different, and that really sits good with me because I'm more like, I want to get in there and I want to dig around in your dirt.
Yeah.
So I like
Yeah.
that. So it works out well for me. I'm not very much of a passive healer.
That's okay, right?
It's okay.
Right.
Now, does that work with the chakras too, or just mostly the aura?
Works with the chakra and the auras.
Okay.
Yep.
No, so it's definitely both.
Yep.
Okay.
It's both. Yeah. Very interesting.
Is it one of the newer modalities, or that's been around for a long time as
No,
well?
it's been around for a long time.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So it's funny, they've been doing this stuff for so long, there's still something they just haven't heard about, though.
Right.
Exactly. And there's other things that, classes that come up and you're like, yes, that's for me.
Right. Right.
That's
I mean,
awesome.
the frequency of the planets changing.
Yeah,
You
it's
you
7
have.
higher.
Right, the
Yeah.
resonance is different, so I mean, it's going to make it easier to accept higher orders of
Yeah.
vibrations to bring about healing, on a personal level as well as on a planet level.
Definitely.
All right, so we don't have too much longer for today's episode. If someone wants to get like a reading from you for the Akashic Records or anything else that you do, how can they get hold of you?
I can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and Etsy under Tracy's Magic Beans.
Okay.
And then usually a direct message I'll be notified for.
Okay. Now you do you make jewelry too, correct?
I do. I make crystal and gemstone jewelry.
Okay. All right. How long have you been doing that now?
About 7 years.
That long, huh?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've known you for longer than that,
I
so
know.
sometimes I forget. Goodness. All right, so a lot of people though buy the jewelry as well though too. Is that some of your stuff that you make?
Yes, yeah. These are all, I call them blends. I blend different crystals together depending on what people need, what kind of energetic support they need. Some work really well together and others need a little bit of something different. So always work with the customer to find something that works for their support system.
Do you get a lot of specific requests?
I do get a lot of custom requests, mostly from friends or longtime clients.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, that's interesting. So I just want to get back to the Akashic Records just a little bit. So a lot of times though, when I think of Akashic records, I think of like the book of life, but I think that's just because of what I was taught as a child. And is it like an actual book that they go through though, or is it just like a list of records though for it?
So everybody's records are different.
Okay.
Somebody might have a book sitting on a podium in the middle of a white room. My records are more like a series of tunnels because I'm a very earth-based, grounded person.
Okay.
So everybody's records are different. Everybody's records feel different.
Okay.
You know, some people's records are really fuzzy and, you know, huggable. And some people's records are just very matter of fact. It depends on the person.
Okay, so it's kind of like a soul connection that they have though. Okay. And then what works for them in a sense, yeah.
I know one person, her records were a theater, and she had to, they pulled the curtains back, and I was like, all right, here we go. So it's different for everyone. So if you see it as the book of life, then that's what it is for you.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's really interesting though.
Yeah, well, I think it's also interesting that, I mean, everybody having past lives has done so many different things in past lives. And one of the things you mentioned before was being able to pull something that you need at that point in time to help you deal with a situation. And I think that goes along with the attribute of asking you shall receive.
Yes.
And a lot of times people don't ask, even though the crap is falling down all around them.
They will not ask for help.
They don't think to ask. I mean, I fell one time and I said, the first thing I said as I started to go down, I said, please help me. You know, because I have an understanding. If it's going to happen, help me. Don't wait for it to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Please.
Ask the universe, and the universe will reward you.
Yeah, sometimes people, a lot of times though, like with me, though, when I remind people that, it's like they forget that it's something so simple, but yet it's also the most powerful though too.
Right.
You know, it's just all you have to do is like, just please help me get through the day.
Yep.
Or, you know, please help me though so I don't fall. You know, so nothing gets broken. It's just, you know, the simple things.
But
Simple things.
even the small things, you know, I mean, a lot of times, you know, if people pray to St. Anthony because they lost something, you know, just ask, hey, where did I leave that? Or, you know, and you know, don't get wrapped up in it. Just let it come to you. Just let the answer come to you.
Yeah, I've told people it's like, it's gonna be as simple as just help me get through the day or help me get up in the morning.
Yep.
You know, it doesn't have to be anything super complicated. And people just kind of get this like, oh my goodness, it's just that simple. It's like, it should be harder than that, but it's not. You know, it's just really that simple.
We don't think the simple answer is the way to go, but it really is.
Yeah.
Right.
That's really interesting though. So it's nice though to have you on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was fun.
Very good.
So it's just nice having like one way to be able to help people though in there, in that journey of life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So and just the mucky muck of everything though, and how things just get so scrambled, but yet though it's like just a little bit of clarity for that though. Yes. Okay, so we're just about done. Can you just remind us again though how to get a hold of you?
Sure. So you can get a hold of me through Facebook, Instagram, or Etsy. My shops are Tracy's Magic Beans.
Okay.
Okay.
No, so on Facebook though, you're as Tracy Malloy as well too for the page?
Actually, if you just put in Tracy's Magic Beans, my shop will come up.
It will come up. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's directly just through the Magic Beans store. Okay.
Yep.
All right, that's
Good.
interesting. Yeah, that's really, really kind of cool.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
so what got you started in this? I didn't even ask you that in the beginning. I usually ask that right in the beginning.
An empath breakdown.
Oh no, how'd that happen?
I didn't realize I was an empath and I was overloaded.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yep.
that's bombardment for sure.
Yep.
So how'd you figure out it was that?
I actually joined a Facebook group called Energy Flows. And I had some discussions with some of the teachers there, and they were like, oh, you got a lot of things that you're holding on to that don't belong to you. And so with the help of them and you know, other people in our community, I was able to figure that out and learn how to deal with it, you know.
And the reason behind what's going on.
Yes.
Yeah. That's what I like about the spiritual community.
Yeah.
There's you could always find out what's going on, like the why behind it.
Yes.
And there's always an explanation for it.
Yep.
You know, you'll always find out that answer.
Yep.
You know,
I was not depressed or anxious. I was just absorbing everybody else's depression.
Yeah. And that can be a tough thing.
Yeah.
Being a fellow empath myself, it's really tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's a nice